Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be going over the 5 things that I don't exactly like about the all-new Infiniti QX80. Before we get into the video though, as always, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get into it. Number 1 is the transmission. The new QX80 still utilizes a 7-speed automatic transmission, which is okay, but it's not great, especially when you compare it to Nissan's 9-speed that they can, give to Infiniti to throw in this. And so what I've noticed with the transmission is it's good for getting good fuel economy, but it's not so great when it comes to acceleration. It just doesn't downshift to a low enough gear because of how it is set up. And on top of not downshifting to a low enough gear, the gearing is just way too long, and so, yeah, it needs a new transmission. Number 2 is certain controls. So this is a luxury SUV, but you guys can see a lot of economy car elements in it with all of the plastic throughout. I definitely think that's something that, Infiniti could do to improve the overall feel of the interior. And then stuff like the volume and tuner control, like the tuner control sometimes lags so much with the infotainment system. And I'm like, it's kind of annoying. But yeah, I definitely think they could do, stuff like that to improve like the tuner control, but then also just make these controls look a little bit nicer so it feels a little bit more like a luxury vehicle. Number 3 is the seats. So these seats are actually really comfortable, and I love the look of them as well with the design, but you can see there's like no bolstering here on the bottom, like it's very minimal, and then here on the side it's also pretty minimal. And so because of how wide these seats are, I find myself sliding all over the place with the seat. Like you can't go around corners very quick with this vehicle, which I mean it's a full-size SUV, so I'm not talking about like race track levels of cornering, but I'm talking about just like going around a corner and sliding on the seat and like holding onto the steering wheel so that like I don't move too much. Like it's kind of frustrating, and so I think they just need to add a little bit more bolstering. If it seems like these seats are made for like obese people, like I'm not trying to be offensive, I'm just trying to be honest, like with how big these seats are, with the width and with how small the bolstering is, if you were like 300 or 400 pounds, you would be super comfortable in these. So it's kind of interesting. Number 4 is the fact that it feels old. And I do want to mention on my last point about the seats being made for really big people, I guess also bodybuilders like Mr. Olympias, they should probably drive QX80s because they would fit in those seats so well. But anyways, this definitely does feel old school. I happen to own a Toyota 4Runner, and guess what? They feel pretty, well, there's a lot of differences, but they feel pretty similar in terms of like that old school feel. Like this feels like a body on frame SUV that you could buy like 20 years ago. Obviously it has a bunch of modern tech, but also like, I mean, look at the thing, right? It has some modern LED lights and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, compared to like modern vehicles, it doesn't look nearly as like modern and sleek. I mean, like look at this, and then we have our little Expedition, which by the way, if you want to buy it, please give me an offer because I need to get rid of that thing. Like it kind of feels and looks more like something like that rather than, a modern crossover or SUV. So it's kind of interesting. Number 5 is, well, certain functional / stylistic bits. I think the grille kind of looks funky on this. The rest of it, though, I think they did a pretty good job. The mirrors, they look kind of funky as well. I've never been a fan of like these side steps where they have like body painted element on it. I think that looks strange. And then the bumper like pokes out like 20 feet, which is kind of weird. Also, the Infiniti logo down the center, how it connects it, that also looks kind of funky. And then we kind of already touched base on the interior, but it's so strange when you have a door panel this nice just to go to, well, it's kind of soft touch, but it almost looks like hard touch plastic. So it's kind of weird, the contrast with some of the materials. But again, I'm not going to knock it too much for that because a lot of cars do it. And at least they made it, I wonder if the front one's padded too. Yeah, it is. At least they made that padded, so they got that going for them. But yeah, it's just some of the style bits are a little bit funky on this thing. That's going to sum things up with our video on the 5 things I don't exactly like about the new Infiniti QX80. With that being said, I'll see you.